What's good, Raider Nation? It's your boy Sanjit back at it with another video. Today we are talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Las Vegas Raiders. Probably the biggest game of the season for the Raiders because 3-3 is a lot different than 2-4. And yes, the season's technically not over, but things just aren't looking good right now. All right, things aren't looking good for the Raiders as you kind of go forward from this point because you still have Getsy, you still have Antonio Pierce, and you still have two quarterbacks that are highly limited. And yesterday we saw Aidan O'Connell come out there and have some struggles. Now he did have some good moments, right? And I do got to give Aidan O'Connell some credit for certain throws that he did have, right? He had one really nice pass. It was an incompletion. It was a beautiful pass, man. To me, the accuracy, the ball placement that Aidan O'Connell has when he's kept clean is really good, right? He has these plays where he'll get it like right over the defender's hands. And Aidan O'Connell had a couple of nice passes yesterday. But at the end of the day, the Raiders weren't able to get it done. And Aidan O'Connell was definitely part of the issue, right? He definitely had negative plays as well. And I think when you kind of take it in total, right, you look at every single issue that happened for the Raiders yesterday, it's pretty much the same stuff we've seen up to this point. Obviously, with Aidan O'Connell back there, things are different, right? We have a different quarterback. So there's different limitations at this point. There's different things that are kind of happening. One of the interesting things that happened yesterday was the Raiders started off hot. First drive of the game, they drive right downfield. They score a touchdown. And what I saw initially when I watched the game was impressive. I was like, damn, this Raiders team might be it. Getsy might not have ever been the issue with the Bears. They may have always been Justin Fields. Maybe we should have went with Aidan O'Connell from the start, right? Because he looked really good on that first drive. But when I watched the tape this morning, I realized exactly what happened on that first drive. Yes, the Raiders came out. They had like 6-7 really nice plays that led to them ultimately scoring a touchdown. But really, I think what kind of happened was kind of what always happens with the Raiders, right? It's not that it always happens with the Raiders, but I guess it happens in the NFL, right? A team comes out there, the defense really doesn't know what to expect. They're not 100% sure what's going to happen with the offense. They're playing a little conservative. They're not really sure with the route concepts and the combinations and those type of things. They're trying to get a feel for it. And with the Raiders specifically, it's your stick routes that you're going to run. The Raiders run stick routes like 50% of the time. It's only going to work so often, right? You're only going to pick up 8-9 yards so often. Guys are only going to play back so often, right? It's not going to happen on every single play. You run a screenplay for Getsy. It'll work probably early on until the defense makes an adjustment. They see it a couple times, and then they are ultimately able to shut it down. In the first drive of the game, the Raiders had a busted coverage that allowed Madison to pick up a ton of yards, get all the way down to the 1 yard line. Right? The Raiders had some moments against the Steelers on that first drive, but it wasn't like our offense just came out and bullied the Steelers. Right? It was just basic stuff that the Steelers, in my opinion, just weren't, they just weren't aggressive to come out. Right? They just didn't look ready. Right? And then they had one play that was a cover one. Cornerback, for whatever reason, doesn't take the guy in the flats. They end up getting two guys on the tight end. Madison's wide open. Quarterback delivers a pass to Madison. He picks up a ton of yards. We get down to the 1. We punch it in. We score a touchdown. And obviously watching it yesterday versus watching the tape today is two different things, right? But from that point forward, there were just so many negative things. And there's a reason why the Raiders really didn't do anything for the rest of the game. But they had one other drive where they scored a touchdown, but that drive was at a time when it was really garbage time, right? Let's just call it what it is. We scored a touchdown. We've done this 3 times now this season, where the game is essentially over and then we drive downfield and we score a touchdown when it doesn't matter, right? Realistically, the Raiders scored 7 points yesterday. They scored 7 points last week as well, right? The other loss that we had with Gardner Minshew, the quarterback. So it's not just Aidan O'Connell, right? Minshew's had his struggles. We haven't been good on offense because of, not just Aidan O'Connell yesterday, right? But there were issues with Aidan O'Connell. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's start right away. Let's get into Getsy. One of the big issues with Getsy, and there's 2 things that I really see as an issue with Getsy. And there's more, but these are the 2 biggest, right? One is essentially going to be play calling. Right? Getsy doesn't know when to call a proper play. Right? So I think there's a misconception that kind of happens, which is, if the Raiders run the ball on 3rd and 11, if the Raiders on 3rd and 5 run the football and then they punt on 4th down, people just make the assumption that Antonio Pierce is telling Getsy what to do. That's not true. It is very rare that a head coach will tell a Getsy that, hey, run the football. right, run in on this play. It's very rare that a head coach is telling him a play caller what to call. Very rare, right? The only thing Antonio Pierce would ever tell Luke Getsy is he would tell Luke Getsy that, hey, we're in a position where it's 3rd and 7. If you want to run the football, you can. We're going to go for this if we can pick up at least 2 or 3 yards. So Luke Getsy might call a run play in 3rd and 7, depending on where they're at, because they might go for it, right? But Antonio Pierce is never coming in there and telling Luke Getsy that, hey, it's third, 2nd and 20 or whatever, 1st and 20, and let's run the football 5 times, right? Like, Antonio Pierce isn't telling Luke Getsy what to do. So play calling is one of the issues with Luke Getsy. Another is the execution element of it, right? Guys are confused, and I cannot overstate that. We literally have guys that don't know what they're doing, or they're being taught to do something, and it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you guys a couple examples as we kind of get into it. But first, let's talk a little bit about the play calling. Everybody knows that Luke Getsy ran the ball on 3rd and 11. Made no sense to me. I know some people will say, hey, you want to be conservative, you want to be safe, run the football, pick up a couple yards. Maybe you pick up all 11, but just pick up a couple, punt the football, play defense. And that's great and all, right? But if the other team on 3rd and 12 isn't, playing as conservative as you, instead that team on 3rd and 12 goes for it and they pick the first down up and they continue the chains, you're essentially playing to lose while this other team over here is playing to win. You're not going to win football games that way, right? The NFL is no longer this league where you're just playing conservative. Like, teams are aggressive out there, right? The Ravens are a great example of a team that, they want to win games. They don't play to lose. They play to win. The Raiders aren't doing that at the moment. All right, running the football on 3rd and 11 doesn't make sense. But more than that, running the football on 1st and 20 doesn't make sense either. And Luke Getsy did that as well. 1st and 20 is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to do, right? Run the football. Now, you can run it on 1st down, right? Maybe you pick up 5-6 yards, and then you throw it on 2nd and 3rd down. Not only did the Raiders run the ball on 1st and 20, they picked up like 1 or 2 yards. Then they ran the ball again on 2nd and 18, essentially. 2nd and long, they run the football again. What the hell are the Raiders doing? And that's our play caller right there. Right? It's a guy that does not know when to call plays at what time. Like, I really don't think Luke Getsy actually thinks to himself that, hey, we're in a 1st and 20, we're in a 2nd and 18. I think he just thinks like it's first down on every play, and he just calls plays like it's first down on every play. Because Luke Getsy's such a bad play caller. He doesn't understand. Someone needs to sit down with this guy and walk him through the entire game and say, why'd you make this call in this moment? Because it doesn't make sense a lot. The next part of Luke Getsy that I think is an issue is going to be the execution, as well as making sure guys know what they're doing. Because there's so many moments where it just doesn't make sense. You watch the play on tape, right? You watch the play on tape, and you watch it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times because it just doesn't make sense. The execution part of it doesn't make sense. We had a play on 3rd and 3 where, the Raiders are already down at this moment. It's not like the game's over, but you're down at this moment. You need to put up some points. You need to give the defense something to play for. So the Raiders are down 3rd and 3, and you essentially throw the ball for 1 or 2 yards. Now, the play thought process isn't terrible, right? The Raiders are essentially trying to run a rub concept. They're trying to run these double screen rub type looks. At the bottom of your screen, you're going to essentially get a rub route with Trey Tucker, who's going to try to pick off Brock Bowers' guy. And for some reason, Aidan O'Connell doesn't actually throw that pass. Instead, he comes back. He looks at Harrison Bryant. Keep in mind, Harrison Bryant and Alex Bachman are essentially also doing the same thing, right? They're trying to run some sort of rub route as well. Bachman does not execute this play properly, right? To me, that's on the wide receiver for not getting there. And then with that, Harrison Bryant does catch it, but he only picks up a yard on 3rd and 3, and then we essentially punt the football. To me, that play right there, that moment of the game. Now, before we go forward, I want to just take a second to give a big shout out to the sponsor of this channel, because this content would not be possible without Underdog. If you guys have never utilized Underdog before, trust me, man, you guys are missing out. I don't do traditional fantasy sports that often. I did do one league this year, but generally speaking, I'm not really doing it anymore. And that's mostly because of Underdog. Underdog has this game that I really, really enjoy. It's called Pick'em. Essentially, you're going to go out there and just make picks that you think are going to be right. They'll have pretty much every pick you can think of for every player, and they have multiple categories as well. So an example would be, I think Aidan O'Connell is going to throw for 125 yards. And you're essentially just going to pick higher on that, right? I think he'll have more than 125 yards. You might say, hey, Dak Prescott's going to have at least 2 touchdowns. Pick higher on that. You might say Caleb Williams is going to have a rushing touchdown. And some of those stats also give you multipliers, right? So usually for quarterbacks rushing it in, right? That's something most quarterbacks aren't doing every single week. You'll get like a 4x multiplier on that. So depending on the multiplier, depending on how many picks, you can turn $5 into $400, $1,000, right? Whatever it ends up being. Obviously, it depends on the multiplier, but Underdog to me is one of those places that I pretty much do every single week at this point. Very fun. It makes like watching the Jets and the Dolphins without Tua. It makes them interesting, right? So check out Underdog. If you guys have never used them before, it is the best place. Trust me when I say that. Go to underdogfantasy.com. Use my promo code that you guys see on the screen, or use the app. I recommend the app. So let's get right back into the content. To me, that play right there, that moment of the game, is a moment that the Raiders got to be able to pick up the first down. It's 3rd and 3. Like, you don't get a better, you're not in a better spot to pick up a first down than 3rd and 3. But you got to be able to execute, right? Now, on that play specifically, I'm not sure why Aidan O'Connell doesn't throw to Brock Bowers. You can see the guy clearly falls, but, maybe there's pressure to him. Maybe he doesn't, he doesn't like what he sees on that side. But regardless of that, the guy that Aidan O'Connell then turns to, the guy doesn't even get properly picked. So he throws it to a guy that instantly is going to get tackled. To me, that's a bad play by Aidan O'Connell, but it's also a bad job by the wide receiver. Why do you have guys in the game that are not able to properly utilize a rub route? Like, are we not practicing these things? Right? Because those are things that have to be installed by the offensive coordinator. And that's just one example. It gets really, really ugly with these next couple of plays. So the Raiders are going to run a run-pass option on 1st and 10. And the wide receiver at the top is going to essentially block his guy, but he's going to block him inwards, which doesn't make sense to me. To me, what would make sense is if you look at the wide receiver at the bottom here, he's going to block his guy outwards. The wide receiver at the top should also block his guy outwards, right? Outwards for the wide receivers. Both wide receivers should set up to the inside, because when Harrison Bryant catches this pass, he should be able to turn and he shouldn't get hit right away. To me, that wide receiver clearly does not know what he's doing because he allowed his guy to go to the inside. I know some people are going to say, hey, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm over analyzing moments of this game. Here's the thing, right? You can go watch Mike McDaniel. You can go watch Kyle Shanahan. These offensive coordinators make sure they think about every little detail, right? If you're running a sticks route towards the right and there's 3 wide receivers, right? Let's say the tight end has a 4-yard out. Let's say the receiver in the slot is running a flat route. Let's say there's a receiver to the outside. That outside receiver has a mandatory outside release. He has to make sure that cornerback turns outwards and away from the guys to the inside, right? It's little detail that matters in the game of football. And you see guys like Mike McDaniel, you see guys like Kyle Shanahan. These guys are doing it right, all right? Every single wide receiver for those guys knows what they're doing. For the Raiders, our guys don't know what they're doing. And I know people are going to say, well, hey, those are like backup wide receivers, right? Like Alex Bachman's never going to play when we have our actual starting wide receivers. And that might be true, but the thing is these guys are still on your roster. These guys still have to know what they're doing, right? Like, that's a basic part of installing an offense. If you keep 6 wide receivers, you would think the 6th wide receiver knows what he's doing. And with the Raiders, that's not the case, right? Like, our wide receivers really don't know what they're doing. And it's not even just the 6th guy. Truth be told, Devontae Adams was terrible at blocking as well, right? And it wasn't that he was just terrible. It's that he was blocking guys outwards or inwards when it didn't make sense in that moment. And the thing with this play is, it is a run-pass option. I don't disagree with Aidan O'Connell throwing this to the wide receiver. Yes, Bryant ends up not picking up any yards on this 1st and 10 play. But on the next drive, we have another 1st and 10 run-pass option. And on this one, we're going to lose 4 yards. And this one, to me, has me scratching my head. Because once again, it's a terribly designed play. And I don't know why Aidan O'Connell would not have gotten up there. And why he would not have recognized that cornerback. Right? Why he wouldn't have seen that there's a guy pressing his tight end, essentially. And why he would throw this pass still. Now, another issue with this is, why is the guy getting the ball at the top, right? Why is he all the way at the outside, essentially? And then why is he running outwards, even further out to catch this pass? That doesn't make sense to me, right? This screenplay is not designed properly. That is not how you run these screens. It would have made more sense to throw it to one of the guys to the inside of this guy. And if you wanted to throw the ball to this tight end, why is he running outwards? That doesn't make sense. He should be running backwards, right? He should be losing depth essentially, not running towards the sideline. This doesn't make sense, right? And I know people will say you're overanalyzing. I'm not overanalyzing it. This is just the little details as to why the Raiders' offense is failing. It's not like it's one thing that's causing the big issue, right? It's not like, our right tackle just keeps on losing. That's not the case. The thing is it's a combination of things that are happening that are going back to the offensive coordinator. All right, Luke Getsy doesn't know how to design offensive plays. He doesn't install things properly, right? His wide receivers all don't know what they're doing. They're all confused out there. And this is the same exact shit that I was talking about when he was with the Bears. It's the same basic ass shit that, we haven't fixed. And let's be honest, Luke Getsy's not going to fix it at this point. Luke Getsy's a bad coach, right? And it's been proven multiple times at this point. To me, this play just makes no sense. But then you have another play down in the goal line. Now, obviously, Amir Abdullah fumbles this football, and he's 100% to blame for fumbling that football. There's no questions asked about it. But why do we have a linebacker lined up on the line of scrimmage that's going unblocked? Patrick Queen jumps the gap, and he goes unblocked. And Amir Abdullah, as soon as he gets the ball, has to now avoid Patrick Queen. And he does do a good job avoiding it, but then TJ Watt comes. Keep in mind, Amir Abdullah has to change direction. He has to jump cut, and with that, the grip on the football is going to get loose a little bit, right? When you're jump cutting and you're moving your body and your arm is going to come out a little bit. And to me, it just, again, Amir Abdullah definitely fumbles on him. But why do we have a guy going unblocked? Why is our right tackle and our tight end double teaming outwards on Patrick Queen? Because when I watch this play, Jordan Meredith has a guy that he picks up right in front of him. Andre James has a guy on him. He picks him up. Jackson Powers-Johnson picks his guy up. And you can see all three of those guys step essentially to the right, and their helmet lands to the right side of that defensive line. Every single one of those guys. But then we have a guy in Patrick Queen that essentially goes unblocked. That doesn't make sense to me. And then you have two guys picking up one. That doesn't make sense to me. Right? Someone out there is confused. Someone out there is not doing what they're supposed to do. I'm going to put the blame here on the rookie right tackle in DJ Glaze. I think DJ Glaze makes the wrong decision. Now, again, I understand it's an inside zone, and usually you're blocking, the guy to your outside. Or at least if there's a guy lined up across from you, you're trying to get your shoulder to the outside of that guy. And I understand for DJ Glaze, it might have made sense for him to block out. But the thing is, you have a guy to your inside. You have to pick this guy up. Now, I do want to give credit to Jordan Meredith on this one. He does try to pick up both guys, right? You can see he tries to get into both guys. But that's not realistic, right? So to me, our offensive linemen are not coached properly, right? DJ Glaze has basically been here from day one. He should know this stuff at this point, right? Like, you should have your guys prepared for every single moment. If you're running inside zone, you should make sure that, you show a front of 6 guys, and then you show a double A mug look, right? You put linebackers in both A gaps. Then you should show this look that the Steelers had. And you should make sure your guys know who they're blocking on every single moment. Because there's no reason why the Raiders don't score a touchdown. And this Amir Abdullah fumble, again, it's on the running back. Flip the entire game, right? This play right here flipped the entire game, and to me, you just can't have that, man. It's just unfortunate. Now, the Raiders have struggles, right? And I think Luke Getsy's obviously at the top of that list. Aidan O'Connell had some moments yesterday, right? I would definitely say that Aidan O'Connell looked good at certain times. He made a couple of nice plays. There were plays within structure that he made, right? Which I feel like Gardner Minshew struggles with sometimes, right? Like, you get a sticks concept to the left, you take the throw, right? Even if the play only picks up 2 yards, if that's the design, you take it. Gardner Minshew wasn't always doing that, right? Gardner Minshew had some issues with playing within structure. I also do think that sometimes as a quarterback, if you're always playing behind the sticks like the Raiders are, you try to compensate for that a little bit. And to me, that's exactly what happened with Aidan O'Connell yesterday as well. Now, Aidan O'Connell did have some bad moments. He had some bad passes specifically. He got blitzed a little bit. That kind of forced him into situations where, he made bad plays essentially, right? So let's talk about this a little bit. So we had a 1st and 10 run pass option, which we already talked about this play. We ended up losing 4 yards on this. We had a 2nd and 14. You're going to get a pass to the running back. The running back's going to end up picking up a ton of yards. And now you're in a 3rd and 6, right? So the Raiders in a 3rd and 6 is not terrible. You should be able to pick the first down up. You're going to get Harrison Bryant that's going to chip with the right tackle, essentially on TJ Watt. Harrison Bryant's going to release. He's wide open. 3rd and 6. You got to hit this if you're Aidan O'Connell. All right, you got to be able to hit this because the thing with Aidan O'Connell, we don't expect Aidan O'Connell to make plays with his legs. We know he can't really throw well while he's running, right? He's not a good passer when he's rolling to his right or he's trying to make plays with his legs. So we know he's not great at doing that. So what we're relying on with Aidan O'Connell is, he has to think well. He has to be quick and decisive with his passes. He has to get his balls to his wide receivers, and they got to be accurate passes. So he had a 3rd and 6 play, which the Raiders could have possibly picked up a first down on that play right there. And I only bring up plays where it's off target because there's multiple examples of that on tape, right? Like I wouldn't nitpick one play unless, we saw this happen multiple times. There's another 3rd down play that Aidan O'Connell missed Amir Abdullah, right? It's just a high pass. You got to be able to hit your running back on that 3rd and 3 because you pick up a first down here. Or if you just picked up like 5 yards on this, there was about 5 seconds left. You pick up 2-3 more yards, you call a timeout. You're in field goal range, right? You could have potentially kicked a long field goal right before half. Missing that throw to the running back, you just can't have that, right? And again, there's other plays like this where he missed guys that were essentially open, 3rd down, 2nd down. Ultimately, these plays lead to punts. They lead to turnover on downs, right? You got to hit those plays if you're Aidan O'Connell, right? And again, it's his first start. I will overlook that. To me, I think Aidan O'Connell, as he continues to start, as he continues to play, I think he'll get better and better and better with the ball placement. But I will say this, also Aidan O'Connell, he did have some bad decisions. And I think with Aidan O'Connell, that's the one thing we can't have. Right. But the thing is, Aidan O'Connell is, in my opinion, inexperienced. And I think him having bad plays is not really shocking to me, especially at this point. Let's just look at some of these plays. So I think Aidan O'Connell's worst play of the game was the interception he had. It was a really, really bad play. Right. He wasn't blitzed. It was a little bit of pressure, nothing crazy. Right? It was just a 4-man rush. He threw it in a way where it just didn't make sense to me. I don't know why Aidan O'Connell threw this pass. Now, I'm going to make the assumption he just didn't see 1 or 2 of these guys. But the play made no sense to me. There's 3 guys in coverage, and you're throwing it up to your tight end, and there's just no chance this is ever going to be completed. Right? There's literally no chance, and that interception right there led to points as well. Right? So, I don't know what Aidan O'Connell was doing on that play. Right? That was a really, really bad decision by Aidan O'Connell. Now, there were other bad decisions that Aidan O'Connell had as well. There was another play that probably should have been a pick 6. Now, keep in mind, the game was over at this point, so it really didn't matter. But the thing with this play is, the route that this receiver runs, right? It's essentially just a hitch route. He stops himself. If this pass is not, if it's not on point, if it doesn't come out exactly when it should, which this one did not, right? This one was super late. You can't ever throw that, right? It's gone. There's no reason for you to throw that because now you have a guy that stopped, for 5 yards. He stopped himself. And now the cornerback has seen this guy's route. The cornerback is going to start to creep a little bit. He's going to get close enough where he'll be able to potentially jump it. And Aidan O'Connell still threw it. And this didn't make sense to me at all. Now, I understand no one else is open, but you can't throw it late. You can never throw it late because that's a potential interception. You either throw it on time, and if you don't throw it on time, you throw it away or you check it down or whatever. But this play probably should have been an interception, could have been a pick 6 potentially as well. You can't have that. It's a bad decision by Aidan O'Connell. There was another play. This one was actually really early on in the game. I think this was like the 2nd drive that the Raiders had the football. Aidan O'Connell was pressured a little bit, and I will say that with that pressure, it may have made him panic a little bit. But the thing is this play would have probably been another interception had the ball not actually gotten tipped. Right, if Aidan O'Connell throws this play, you see the linebacker's right there. He essentially jumps it as the ball gets thrown. But that's another bad decision as well. And I get it. Andre James gets pushed right back into Aidan O'Connell. but you can't make those plays. And another thing is just a late pass again, right? The tight end stopped himself already. If the ball's not out exactly on time, you can't throw it a second late, because a second late in the NFL is an interception, right? So to me, you got to do a better job on that. Now, we also know Aidan O'Connell's a little limited. The Steelers did blitz Aidan O'Connell on third downs, right? Those are 3rd and 17. At one point, they blitzed him. He checked it down. We picked up like 5 yards. There was a 2-point conversion the Raiders went for as well. And the receiver at the left had a whip in, right? He had a whip route back towards the inside. And Aidan O'Connell gets pressured right to the middle. And here's one of the limitations that Aidan O'Connell will always have. If you pressure Aidan O'Connell, and if the route concept is not a quick route concept, let's say a guy has a 15-yard dig route, right? Or if a guy has a whip in, like the way on that 2-point conversion, if you blitz Aidan O'Connell, he's not running away from guys, right? Those routes will never develop downfield. You're going to get incomplete passes. If there's not a check down option, which obviously in a 2-point conversion, you're not going to really have a check down. If the quarterback gets blitzed and he's not able to create, you're going to have these limitations. You're going to have these moments. And the thing is the Steelers, although they blitzed, they didn't blitz a ton. Right? Next week or the week after, a team might blitz a lot more. And they might come after the quarterback a little bit more. And then, the Raiders might say, okay, let's make a counter. Let's have some quick routes on these blitz plays, right? 3rd down, a team shows blitz. We have this quick route. We're going to hit it. They might drop off, right? And then now you're stuck as well, right? So, to me, with quarterbacks that are limited, it really ruins things, essentially, for an offense, right? And the thing is the Raiders don't have just one quarterback that's limited. We have 2, right? Aidan O'Connell's not the only quarterback that's limited with the Raiders. Gardner Minshew is as well, right? What I'm showing you guys with Aidan O'Connell, Minshew's done same things, right? Although they're different, right? Gardner Minshew's missed guys that we've talked about in past videos. Gardner Minshew's had some bad decisions, which we've talked about in past videos. And also I want to say this, some of these, Aidan O'Connell missing the guys, you put that on Aidan O'Connell, but then some of the play designs are really bad play designs, right? And although Aidan O'Connell makes the decisions on some of these plays, I don't blame Aidan O'Connell 100% for any of these plays, because at the end of the day, I think Luke Getsy is such a terrible, terrible offensive coordinator. And I hope people have realized now that, Aidan O'Connell, Gardner Minshew doesn't really matter. Luke Getsy is going to limit these guys no matter what, right? Because the great offensive coordinators are winning with Aidan O'Connell or with Gardner Minshew. Aidan O'Connell, to me, he's good when it comes to throwing the ball, but you got to structure an offense in a way where he's able to play within rhythm, and then you're not making mental mistakes. And you throw a screen pass to the right with the way we run our screenplays, and now you're looking at 2nd and 14. Or you have a holding play, right, essentially, and you're in a 1st and 10, now you run the ball twice. Those things don't make sense. Those are limiting factors from an offensive coordinator, right? So, again, I don't blame Aidan O'Connell for all of this, but he did have his moments. I think the Raiders should continue to go forward with Aidan O'Connell. Let's give him 4 to 5 more weeks. Let's see if, something can click. If not, in 5 weeks or whenever the Raiders decide to finally fire Luke Getsy, maybe we go back to Gardner Minshew and then see how he does for a couple of games with the new coach. And then maybe we can, finish the season with Aidan O'Connell. Either one of these quarterbacks gets it going, or we're going to have a top 10 pick, right? So we'll see what ends up happening as we kind of go forward. There are some other things the Raiders have to clean up, right? I think Andre James is one of the shittiest offensive linemen I've analyzed this season so far. It's always funny to me, and I hate doing this, right? Because I'm not the type of guy that is like, hey, I'm going to throw it in your face, if you say something. I'm not that type of guy. Trust me. If you guys know me in real life, you guys know that is not the type of person I am. But, on social media, we get so many people that put out the most ridiculous takes out there. And I'm not 100% perfect either, right? Like, I'll be wrong a lot. But when it comes to offensive linemen, I don't think, I think I'm right more often than I'm wrong, right? And with Andre James, I was saying this guy is bad. I've been saying it for like 2 years now. And the thing is there were people that were literally telling us that Andre James is a top 10 center. Literally. Some people are calling him a top 5 center. And it's just crazy to me that people thought that of Andre James. I hope people realize something with centers is the easiest position in the NFL. Right? There's not an easier position than the center position. Right? And maybe that's over exaggerating a little bit, right? But the center position, when you think about it from a pass pro perspective, a center is almost never going to be in a one-on-one block. Almost never, right? And then when it comes to run blocking, being a center, maybe a little bit harder than being a guard because of the fact that you have to snap the ball, but it's a super, super easy position, right? Centers are very easy to find in the NFL draft, but you got to make those you got to open your eyes and actually go look for those guys, right? The Raiders didn't do that. Tom Telesco made a massive, massive bad decision by paying Andre James. I think that was such a poor decision. I think it would have made a lot more sense to take Dylan Parham and move him to center. And then I think it would have made more sense to go out and either trade, a third round pick for a guard that's a top tier guard, right? Like Tevin Jenkins, that's on an expiring contract. Like the Bears might not pay Tevin Jenkins. Samuel Cosby, Commanders. He might not actually get paid because these are guys that are good, but those teams might not want to pay them. Trade a third round pick for one of these guys and then extend them and pay them. That way you have a Jackson Powers Johnson who's on a rookie contract for 4 years. You have a guard you paid for 4 years. You have a rookie tackle that you have for 4 years. You have Dylan Parham at center, who I think is a lot better than Andre James, is not comparable. Your offensive line would actually be better. I think Andre James has so many bad plays. He gets pushed back so much. Like, we can't even simply toss it to the outside without our quarterback getting hit by Andre James. Like, basic ass shit, right? And this guy's such a bad football player, and it's crazy to me because when he came out, there was upside with him as a rookie. Right? There was upside with Lester Cotton as a rookie as well. You saw flashes. These are undrafted guys. There's upside. After 2, 3, 4 years, if there's no development, you get rid of these guys. And Andre James has never developed, right? Lester Cotton's still in the NFL. He's pretty good as well. I don't think he starts for the Dolphins. Don't quote me on that. But, like, if you're not improving, while everybody else around you is improving, it means you're essentially getting worse, right? The Raiders got to clean up some of those fumbles as well, right? You can't fumble the football. You got to clean up the turnovers, right? We had 3 turnovers yesterday and a turnover on downs, right? So essentially you got 4 plays. You can't have that, right? That's losing football. The Raiders, if there's one thing they should have done this year, it's they should have beat the Steelers, they should have beat the Broncos, they should have beat the Chargers. Because we're better than all 3 of those teams, in my opinion, right? But the fact that our offensive coordinator is who he is, we essentially lost all 3 of those games. And then Jackson Powers Johnson had a really good game as well. He had a couple of really nice plays against Cam Hayward. I will say this, Hayward's a top 10 defensive tackle. Powers Johnson did have losing snaps to Hayward, right? It wasn't like Powers Johnson just dominated this guy. But last year when we played the Steelers, Hayward dominated Andre James. I know you guys remember that game, or maybe it was the year before. I think it was last year. Powers Johnson, a rookie, came in and had some really nice snaps against Hayward. He had plays where he was pushing this guy outwards. He was dominating him. He was moving him. He had a pass play where he snatched down Hayward. Right? These are positive plays that Jackson Powers Johnson's having. And that's against a guy that some people think might be a Hall of Fame caliber player. And I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but he's a really, really good defensive tackle. He's been one of the best over the last 10 years. And Jackson Powers Johnson came in and had a couple of really, really nice plays against him. Now, Powers Johnson did have one mistake, which I think would have flipped the entire game for the Raiders, right? Amir Abdullah fumbled the football. A couple plays after this play essentially happened. Essentially, it was a touchdown play that the Raiders had. It was a run-pass option to the left. Quarterback pulls it. He doesn't want to actually hand it off. He looks to the left to potentially throw it. His guys are not open on that side. He rolls to the right. He hits his running back for a touchdown. And the referees called an ineligible man downfield. Now, I'm not 100% sure if it's just 1 yard is all you can go. I'm not sure what the rule is. I should probably Googled it, but I feel super sick, so I didn't. But to me, this is a bad call, right? Because some people are saying this is on Jackson Powers Johnson. Some people say it's on Andre James. Andre James is further downfield than Jackson Powers Johnson is at the end of the play. But the ball's at the 6-yard line, and I don't see JPJ going past the 4. So that's essentially 2 yards. How do you call that? To me, that's crazy that you call a guy being essentially from the line of scrimmage 2 yards upfield. Because I could show you guys 1,000 examples of run pass options or plays like this where the offensive lineman is like 3-4 yards downfield and it's not called. Right? To me, that's a terrible call right there by those referees. And I'm not sure why it was essentially called, but it was called for some reason. And that was one of the moments that ultimately lost the Raiders this game. Again, the Raiders didn't lose this game because we played, like terrible across the board. We lost this game because of mistakes. A receiver didn't block a screen properly. The right tackle loses, and then that defenseman punches the football out. A guy doesn't block a guy across from him, and he goes unblocked. And he blows the play up in the backfield. The running back's trying to make some plays. He fumbles. There were just moments across where you say, if you're able to clean up, 7 plays essentially, this game's a completely different game. And what's sad about that is that's kind of been the Raiders this entire season. Against the Broncos, just a couple of plays where you cleaned up and you win that game. Against the Chargers, you clean up a couple of plays, you win that game. And I'm just not sure what you can do at this point, because usually that's on the head coach. That's on Antonio Pierce to have it right. Antonio Pierce has to be able to do that. And unfortunately with the Raiders, our head coach, who doesn't call plays, is not able to have guys not turn the ball over. Is not able to have guys play a clean game. Right? And it's unfortunate because I don't really know how it's going to get fixed at this point. But my hope is that the Raiders at some point, either it clicks with Luke Getsy or they get rid of Luke Getsy, and then at that point it clicks. But we'll see what ends up happening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another video.